Okay, guys, we're going to learn how to draw this very simple chessboard by just using vanilla JS. So in my HTML, you see all I have is this empty div with the ID board. So we're going to start here. Now for the CSS, I'll talk about this later, but this will be how we color in our tiles in the chessboard. So blank HTML, in JS, we just have the document.query selector. Okay. So we can actually do this very simply by using the while loop. So we're going to run as long as the boards.child element count is less than 8. Because what's our strategy here? If we go back, our strategy is that we're going to create, let's see, we have board, then we're going to create 8 rows. That's these 8 divs here. And inside of each div, we're going to create 8 more tiles. Okay? So if you look at this chessboard, we have 8 rows going across, and each row has 8 tiles or squares inside. So now we can do something like, let's see, let's create our rows first. Const row will be equal to document, .create element, and I'm just going to use a div. Okay. Now let's do row.dataset.row index, because we want to know which index we're at, would just be equal to the board.child element count. Cool, right? So now we have a row. Now we want to create the 8 tiles that goes inside of these rows. Okay. So we can do that by simply, let's see, we can do a regular for loop. Let I equal 0. And remember, we want 8 rows. Okay, so less than 8, and then increasing by 1. Now I'm going to create my tiles the same way I did with row. Okay. So now, how do we get the coordinates? Well, let's just do tile.dataset.x. So this is the x coordinate, would just be equal to this, the board.child element count, right? Because this is a loop inside of a while loop. So that's why it works. And then tile.dataset.y coordinate would just be equal to the current index of this inner for loop. Okay. So now that we created this and the tile, we can do something like tile, let's do dot inner HTML will be equal to something like, let's do a div, and then we can do things like displaying the x coordinate. Okay. We do a comma here, as well as the y coordinates, like this. Okay. Now, after all of this, we have to take the tile and append it to the row. Okay, so we have to do row.append child, and we're going to append the tile that we just made and modify. Now, outside of this for loop, before we exit the while loop, we need to take our board and we need to append the row that we created. Okay. Now, this will prevent this while loop from running forever, because it's only running as long as this has less than 8 child elements. Okay. So now with this, if I click run with live server, let's see what we have. Cool. We have it. It's just not looking very nice. So let's fix that. So we have the board. Can we do display flex? Let's see what this does. Okay, cool. Now, how do we make it so it looks a lot nicer like this one? Well, let's select the board, then select our direct children of board that are divs, and then once more. Okay, so now we're selecting these squares themselves, and then let's make it a real square. Let's give it a height of 2 rem and a width of 2 rem. Cool. Now, how do we center this vertically and horizontally? If you were thinking text align center, that only does it horizontally. But if you take a look at our JavaScript, we created another div inside each of these. So we can do something like display grid because it has one div children, right? And then you can do place content center. Perfect. Cool. Now let's go over this. How does this work? Well, let's go one by one. This is selecting all even children of board that are divs. And then inside of these divs, it's selecting all of the odd childs. And all of those will be blue, right? Because if we look at the chessboard, it goes white, blue, white, blue. At the end, it's blue, but on the next line, it's also blue. Okay, so it's not going blue and then white. That's why we have to use this selector to select all of the odd childs of even rows, and then vice versa on the second one. Okay, hope that was helpful.